Why was she so calm when they surrounded her? Maybe because she had already been through worse, much worse. That morning the base was a storm of whispers. Uniforms rustled in the hallways, boots echoed on the concrete, and every head turned toward the holding bay where the MPs had cornered her. A woman, slim, steady, her posture military, but no one could place her. She didn't belong to any unit on record. No clearance tags, no file, no orders. Yet she had walked straight through the gates of a restricted seal compound like she owned the place. The guards were tense, hands on their rifles. "Ma'am, stop right there," one barked. She didn't stop, she didn't even flinch. She just handed over an ID card. Naval, top-tier clearance. So perfect it looked like it had come straight out of headquarters. The sergeant scanned it once, twice, then frowned. This can't be right. Before he could say another word, alarms blared across the facility. Within seconds, armed teams surrounded her, 20 men in full gear. "Hands where we can see them." She raised them slowly, palms steady, eyes forward. There wasn't fear in those eyes, there was something else, cold focus, memory. "You're under arrest for impersonating a Navy SEAL," the officer snapped. A muscle in her jaw moved, that was all. Then she spoke, voice low, calm, deliberate. "I trained where your legends were born." That line hit the air like a gunshot. For a second no one moved. Then they laughed, short, uneasy laughter. "You trained where? Lady, you're about to spend a long time explaining this." But something about her tone, the way she stood, shoulders squared, breathing even, made even the lieutenant hesitate. There was discipline there, not imitation, experience. They cuffed her anyway. She didn't resist. She didn't shout or plead. She walked between them like someone who'd already faced judgment before. Outside, the base's morning sun hit the tarmac, glinting off hangars and steel. She caught her reflection in a window, hair tied back, uniform perfect, dirt on her boots. The face staring back didn't look like a criminal. It looked like a soldier who'd forgotten how to rest. When they brought her to Commander Harris, the tension in the air thickened. He was a veteran's veteran, square jaw, silver streaks in his hair, and eyes that had seen too many folded flags. He'd led special operations across continents. He'd buried friends. He didn't have patience for games. He sat behind a desk lined with mission plaques and classified folders, the kind of office that smelled of sweat, metal, and ghosts. When she entered, the guards pushed her forward. "Name?" Harris demanded. She said nothing. He scanned her ID again, eyes narrowing. "This is a federal crime. You're lucky I'm even letting you speak." Her silence wasn't defiance, it was something heavier, a pause filled with old grief. Then finally she spoke. She uttered a sequence of words, a code, short, encrypted, surgical. Harris froze. The guards exchanged glances, confused. But the commander's hand trembled. That code, no one outside a classified unit could have known it. It was from Operation Riptide, a mission that had officially never existed. A decade-old black op off the coast of Somalia. The team was wiped out, file erased, every record sealed. Harris had been there when the after-action report came in. Only one member's body was never found. "Who told you that?" he whispered. Her gaze didn't waver. "No one," she said. "I was there." The room went still. Even the hum of the AC seemed to fade. Outside, boots clanked on the deck. A helicopter roared in the distance. But inside that office, time felt suspended. The guards whispered among themselves. "She's bluffing. She hacked it." But Harris knew better. That code wasn't online. It wasn't written. It had only ever been spoken between ghosts. He dismissed the guards, locked the door. The click echoed like a verdict. Then he stepped closer, voice low, almost a growl. "You're facing the ghost," he muttered. And for the first time her mask cracked, just slightly. A flicker of pain, a shadow across her expression. 10 minutes later, when the door opened again, everything had changed. The cuffs were gone. The posture was different, and the man who'd once been her superior saluted her. The guard stared. "Commander." Harris's voice shook slightly. "Welcome home, Commander Rains." The same woman they just arrested for impersonating a SEAL was now being addressed by rank. Not just any rank, one that outranked almost everyone in that room. The soldiers were speechless. The same uniform they'd mocked now demanded silence. Harris turned toward them, jaw set. "You just arrested the most decorated operator in SEAL history." He wasn't exaggerating. He was barely speaking above a whisper. Later that afternoon, as the sun bled over the Pacific horizon, the whispers had spread like wildfire across the base. "She's the ghost," they said. "The one who disappeared. The one who never came back." Rain sat alone in the debriefing room, the door shut behind her. Her hands rested on the table, fingers tapping once every few seconds, an old rhythm, something only she would recognize. The rhythm of a team that no longer existed. "Commander," Harris said softly, breaking the silence, "you shouldn't be here. They wrote you off years ago." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted toward a framed map of the Horn of Africa on the wall. "I didn't come back for them to find me," she said finally. "Then why?" he asked. "Because something coming back from that mission, sir, and it's not finished." Harris's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" She looked up steady, calm. "Do you remember the name Kestrel?" The color drained from his face. "That op was buried." "So was I," she replied quietly. "But ghosts don't stay buried forever." There was pain in her tone, not the sharp kind, but the dull ache of someone who had outlived what should have killed her. She wasn't there for recognition. She was there because something was unfinished, something that had followed her home. That night, alone in a temporary quarters, Rains opened her locker. Inside were only two items: a worn patch with her old team insignia, half torn, and a folded photograph. 7 faces. She was the 8th, behind the camera. Her reflection stared back from the metal door. Eyes tired, heart heavier than the medals she once wore. Every soldier learns to bury the past, but hers refused to stay buried. She sat down on the edge of the cot, pressed the photo to her chest, and whispered names that no one else remembered. Corbin, Vega, Mills, Harker. Gone, all of them, but one hadn't stayed dead. Her mind replayed that night in Somalia, the rain, the flash of gunfire, the comms cutting out. She remembered the sound of someone whispering through static, "If we don't make it, burn everything." She had, but not everything burned. And now, after all these years, the fire was back. At dawn, the base awoke to silence broken by the distant roar of jets. Rain stood outside the hangar, her hair tied back, a duffel over her shoulder. The air smelled like fuel and salt water. "Where are you going?" Harris asked, catching up to her. She looked toward the horizon. "To finish what I started." "You can't go alone." "I already did once." He stepped closer. "Rains, they won't understand. The Navy buried you for a reason." Her eyes softened. "Then let them keep their ghosts. I'll keep my promises." He stared at her, and for a moment he saw it. The steel under the calm, the sorrow behind the silence. This wasn't just a soldier. This was a woman carrying the weight of a mission the world had chosen to forget. He finally said, "At least tell me why you came back now." Her answer was almost a whisper. "Because someone else just used that same code, Commander. The one only our team knew." The wind caught her words, carried them across the tarmac. Harris stood frozen, realization dawning in his eyes. If someone else had spoken that code, then maybe, just maybe, one of the ghosts wasn't dead after all. That night, she boarded a covert flight under a name that didn't exist. As the engines roared and the world outside turned to stars, she closed her eyes. Her pulse was steady, but inside her thoughts churned. Was she ready to face what she'd buried? Was she ready to meet the person who'd once saved her life? and maybe ended everyone else. No one on that flight knew who she really was. No one would have believed that the quiet woman in the back seat had once been the Navy's most lethal asset. The file had called her codename Ghost. The rest of the world would never know what that meant. But soon they would. She hadn't slept in 40 hours. Maybe longer. But sleep was for those who'd left the fight behind, and she never really did. The cargo plane shuddered as it tore through the clouds above the Indian Ocean. Dim red lights washed over rows of strapped crates and silent soldiers pretending not to notice her. None of them asked who she was. They didn't need to. The way she sat upright, focused, hands still even in turbulence, told them everything. She wasn't new to this. She was built by this. Her eyes stayed on the horizon. In her mind, the waves were still burning. Somalia 10 years ago. That was the last place her team had breathed the same air. Approaching drop zone, the pilot's voice echoed through the cabin. She nodded once, adjusting her gear. Her rifle case rested against her leg, initials burned into the handle, MR. Commander Mara Raines, codename Ghost, wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Her file had been deleted, her name erased, her record sealed under a program that technically never happened. The Pentagon had written her off as KIA, but death for her had just been an assignment she never signed off on. She touched the metal tag hanging beneath her collar. It wasn't a dog tag. It was smaller, an encrypted data chip sealed in titanium. Inside it was everything that had gone wrong a decade ago. She whispered under her breath, one last time. The jumpmaster gave her a thumbs up. No ceremony, no music, just wind, noise, and the endless dark. And then she stepped out. The fall was silent, except for the rush in her ears. She had done hundreds of halo jumps before, but this one wasn't training. This one was a reckoning. Below her, the black waters of the Somali coast stretched like ink, the faint glow of a fishing village miles inland. The same coastline where everything had ended and where she had died. She hit the ground hard, rolling to her feet. Sand, heat, the smell of salt and diesel. She crouched low, scanning the horizon through night vision. Nothing. Just wind. Her comm crackled once, a single encrypted ping. She froze. Someone knew she was here. Hours later, in the shadows of a half-collapsed warehouse, Raines unpacked her kit. Weapons cleaned, map unfolded, mind racing. The coordinates matched the ones she'd found buried deep in an old satellite feed. A ship, classified U.S. vessel, had gone down here. Not destroyed, just hidden. And on that ship, the data core from Operation Kestrel. It wasn't supposed to exist. Neither was she. And yet, both had resurfaced in the same week. Coincidence? She didn't believe in those anymore. She ran a gloved hand across the photo tucked inside her vest. 7 faces. Her voice cracked slightly as she whispered, "Vega Mills, I'm here now." Then she looked out into the dark, and for a moment her expression changed, pain, sharp and unguarded. "Tell me I'm not too late." 2 miles away, a satellite phone buzzed on a desk in a private military outpost. "Sir," the operator said, "we've got movement near Sector 12. 1 heat signature." "Human?" "Yes, sir, alone." The officer leaned forward. "No locals travel that route. Send a drone." Seconds later, an overhead camera flickered to life. A lone figure moved through the dunes, silent, precise. The operator frowned. "Who the hell walks like that?" The officer didn't answer. He knew that gait. He'd seen it once before, years ago, in a classified debrief about a ghost who didn't die. He picked up the phone. "Sir, she's back." Back on the ground, Raines crouched near the ruins of a radar tower. Her breathing slowed. She was being watched. She could feel it, the faint vibration in the air, the hum of a drone nearby. Her hand moved automatically, unsnapping the rifle case. She didn't even aim at the sky. She just waited, counted, then fired one round into the night. A second later, a small explosion lit up the horizon. The drone spiraled down, silent before it hit the ground. She whispered, still predictable. The shot was clean, cold, no emotion, but inside her pulse trembled because it meant she wasn't alone out here. And whoever was watching wasn't just curious. They were expecting her. By sunrise, she had reached the coastline. The water shimmered gold under the new day. Somewhere out there, beneath the waves, lay the wreck that had started it all. She set up her equipment, mini sonar camera, encrypted link. The signal bounced weakly, but it was enough to confirm what she feared. The wreck had been moved. Not destroyed. Moved. Someone had gotten there first. She exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. In her earpiece static, then. A voice faint, familiar. Mara. Her blood ran cold. That voice was impossible. It belonged to LT, Aaron Vega. Her second in command. Her friend. The man she had buried in the sea. She ripped off her headset, heart pounding. No, she whispered. No, you're dead. But the voice came again. Not all ghosts stay buried. The channel cut. Hours passed before she moved again. Fear wasn't in her vocabulary anymore, but disbelief was. She remembered that night, the explosion that tore through the ship, the way Vega had shoved her toward the lifeboat as the fire consumed the deck. The last thing she'd heard from him was, "Go, don't come back." She hadn't until now. But if he was alive, then what had really happened that night? She sat against a rock, staring at the sunrise, her fingers digging into the sand. All these years she'd told herself it wasn't her fault, that the ambush, the betrayal, the silence was beyond her control. But maybe it was. Maybe someone had planned it. Maybe someone had planned to erase all of them and failed. She reached for the data chip again, clutching it like a talisman. Inside it were coordinates, one final location Vega had transmitted before the blackout. Somewhere inland. A name appeared on her cracked tablet screen, Berbera Outpost. Her heart sank. That wasn't just any place. That was the black site where Kestrel was born. And she knew what waited there, secrets meant to stay buried forever. By midday, the desert heat clawed at her skin. She moved like a shadow through the ruins of old concrete bunkers. Her steps were deliberate, careful, quiet. Her eyes caught faded graffiti on a crumbling wall, an old seal motto, scratched by a hand she once knew. The only easy day was yesterday. She smiled faintly, still true. Then she froze. Footsteps close. She pressed against the wall, rifle raised. 3 men emerged from the dust, mercenaries, not locals. Their gear was new, unmarked, too clean for scavengers. Private contractors. Corporate ghosts. She counted quietly, 3 targets 50 meters. The wind shifted. She waited until one turned his head, then fired. One shot, then another. The third man tried to run. She didn't chase him, she didn't have to. He'd lead her straight to whoever was running this operation. That night, under the cold shimmer of desert stars, she found the outpost. Half-buried, quiet. Too quiet. Her flashlight caught the edge of a door half ajar. Inside, maps, notes, empty coffee mugs. And a single phrase scrawled on a wall in English. "The ghost lives." She stared at it for a long time. Her pulse slowed, her throat tightened. Whoever wrote that knew her. And they wanted her to find it. Then her comm clicked again. A voice came through, distorted but real. "You shouldn't have come back, Mara." Her breath caught. "Vega. You left us. I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice." The line went dead. She sank to her knees, eyes burning. The voice had been his, same tone, same rhythm, but colder. "Haunted." Angry. She wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. She was being hunted by one. That night the desert wind howled like an old memory. She sat alone by a small fire, her weapon beside her, eyes fixed on the flames. In her head she replayed Harris's words, "You're facing the ghost." But maybe Harris was wrong. Maybe she wasn't the ghost at all. Maybe Vega was. For the first time in years, her voice cracked into the silence. "If you're out there, Vega, I'm coming." Her hands trembled. Not from fear. From guilt. Because deep down, she knew something Harris didn't. Something no one did. She had pulled the trigger that night. And Vega had never forgiven her for it. She hadn't cried in 10 years. Not when her team was declared dead. Not when she was buried by her own government. Not when she lost her name, her purpose, her face. But that night, staring into the dying fire under the Somali sky, she felt something crack quietly, like an old scar reopening. "Vega," she whispered into the dark, "if you're alive, why did you wait this long to find me?" The wind gave no answer, only the low hum of the desert, the distant echo of something mechanical. She raised her head, listening. It wasn't the wind, it was a drone. Low, circling, watching. By dawn, she was on the move again. Every step through that dry wasteland brought back fragments of memory, the smell of burning fuel, the metallic taste of salt water, the shouting, the static, the silence after. 10 years hadn't erased those sounds. Nothing could. When she reached the ruins of Berbera Outpost, she moved carefully, sweeping corners with her rifle. The air was stale, thick with dust and oil. Old American crates sat cracked open, relics from a mission the world never admitted happened. She crouched near one of them. Inside, she found something that shouldn't exist. A data drive labeled K-47, Project Kestrel. Her heart stuttered. She slipped it into her pocket just as a sound echoed behind her, soft, deliberate footsteps. "Drop the weapon," a voice ordered. She froze. She knew that tone. It was calm, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't bluff. She turned slowly, rifle still down. And then she saw him. He stepped out of the shadows, half his face hidden beneath a tactical mask. But the eyes were unmistakable. Aaron Vega. For a heartbeat, she forgot to breathe. The last time she'd seen him, his body was on fire. Now here he stood, alive, scarred but alive. "Vega," she breathed. "How?" He didn't answer, just watched her like a man studying a ghost. His right eye bore a thin scar running down to his cheek, a reminder of that night. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 10 years buried alive. "You shouldn't have come back, Mara." "I came to finish what we started," she said. He shook his head. "You mean what you started?" There it was, the bitterness, the wound that never closed. She lowered her weapon slowly. "You think I wanted that mission to go sideways? We were set up, Vega. I got the same orders you did." He took a step closer. "And you followed them, I didn't." The silence that followed was heavier than the heat. He wasn't wrong, not entirely. 10 years ago, their team had been ordered to intercept a high-value target, suspected of funding terror cells along the coast. But halfway through the op, the orders changed. New coordinates, new objective. No explanation. They followed command. Vega questioned it. Hours later, they were ambushed. Everyone died except her. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "I thought you were gone." Vega's jaw clenched. "You left me, you left all of us." "I tried to get back," she shot back. "I called extraction, He cut her off. "You didn't bury us, Mara, you buried the truth." She flinched. The accusation hit harder than any bullet. He wasn't just angry, he was broken. She tried to steady her breathing. "Then tell me what truth I buried, because all I saw was fire and betrayal." He pulled a small device from his vest and tossed it onto the table. A holographic image flickered to life, video feed from 10 years ago. Her breath caught. It was the Kestrel mission. The footage showed her team moving through the ship, breaching compartments, comms buzzing with tension. Then suddenly chaos. A missile strike from above, the explosion that tore the deck apart. But as the camera fell, a figure could be seen watching from a nearby ridge. Not an enemy, not a pirate. An American operative. Vega pointed at the image. That's who killed us. That's who you were following orders from. Mara's stomach dropped. The face was blurry but familiar. Commander Harris. The name hit her like an electric shock. No, she whispered, he saved me. He used you, Vega said coldly. You were the bait. Kestrel was never about counterterrorism. It was about erasing a black op gone wrong. We were expendable. She wanted to deny it, but the logic was too sharp, too cruel. The fake orders, the sudden change in target, the way Harris had recognized her code. She felt dizzy. He said he thought I was dead. Vega's voice softened. Maybe he hoped you were. For the next few hours, they sat in the silence of the outpost, the truth hanging between them like a wound that refused to clot. Vega told her how he'd survived, dragged from the wreckage by locals, patched up, and sold to a private contractor who wanted a SEAL ghost on their payroll. He had escaped eventually, but by then every agency believed he was dead. So he became one, a ghost just like her. Only his mission was different. He wanted answers, revenge, closure. You think Harris is still alive? She asked. I don't think, Vega said. I know, and he's not just alive, he's running Spectre Group. The same people who sold our mission logs to private militaries, the same ones who moved the wreck. Raines's chest tightened. That means Harris didn't salute you out of respect, Vega said quietly. He did it because he didn't want anyone to know you were still breathing. She closed her eyes. The realization burned through her veins. The salute, the apology, the soft tone. It was all an act, a farewell before the kill. That night the two of them sat outside the ruins. The desert stretched endless before them. Neither spoke for a long time. Old soldiers don't talk much. They just carry what the rest of the world forgets. Finally, Mara broke the silence. When I heard your voice on comms, I thought I was losing my mind. Vega smirked faintly. You weren't far. She exhaled, then asked the question that had been clawing at her chest since the moment she'd seen him. Why didn't you come for me? He hesitated. Because I thought you were one of them. I thought you pulled the trigger on us. Her head dropped. Maybe I did. His eyes flicked toward her. What do you mean? She looked out into the dark, her voice almost trembling. When the strike came in, comms went dead. You were yelling orders, trying to pull the team back. I was on the lower deck when I saw a target beacon flash near the fuel tanks. I thought it was theirs. I thought if I shot it, I'd stop them. She looked at him. But I didn't stop them. I ignited the beacon. I caused the blast. Vega's expression hardened, but there was something else in his eyes, sorrow. So all this time, she whispered, I thought someone betrayed us. Maybe it was me. He stood up, jaw tight, hands flexing at his sides. That's not on you, he said finally. That's on the man who gave the order. By midnight, they had a plan. If Harris was running Spectre Group, he wouldn't be hiding for long. The organization thrived in chaos, conflict zones, proxy wars, data theft. They operated everywhere but belonged nowhere. Mara and Vega would infiltrate a Spectre transfer site on the coast, disguised as contractors, using stolen credentials Vega had taken from the mercs she'd killed earlier. If the data core was real, it would confirm everything. Before they parted for the night, Vega stopped her. You really came back here just to find me? She looked at him, tired but steady. I came back because someone used our code. I didn't know it was you. He nodded. Guess some ghosts don't like to stay quiet. She smiled faintly. Guess not. He hesitated again, his voice softening. You still wear the patch. She reached into her vest and pulled it out, torn, faded, half gone. He looked at it, eyes flickering with memory. Then he reached into his own pocket and pulled out the other half. They fit perfectly. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was sacred. Hours before dawn, she found herself staring at the horizon again, sleep far away. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. But the weight of what she'd learned pressed hard against her ribs. Harris, the man who had saluted her, who had whispered, "You're facing the ghost," wasn't warning her. He was testing her, seeing if the ghost still remembered how to hunt. And now she did. As the first light crawled across the sand, she whispered a promise, not to Vega, not to the Navy, but to herself. This time, the ghosts are coming for the living. The first rule of ghosts is simple. You don't come back unless you're ready to burn what buried you. Mara Raines had lived by that rule for 10 years. Now, with Vega alive beside her, that rule was about to be tested. They moved through the port city of Berbera under false names, false uniforms, and false light. The air smelled of oil, dust, and secrets. Every alley whispered in another language. Every face turned just long enough to remember theirs. Spectre Group didn't leave banners or flags, they left whispers. They worked inside other companies, under front agencies, wrapped in clean government contracts. But beneath the polish, their business was blood. Raines adjusted her cap, blending in with a convoy of cargo workers. Vega walked a few paces behind, carrying a case that looked like routine logistics equipment. Inside was their breach gear. "Keep your eyes open," she muttered. Vega smirked faintly. "They're open, just wish I could close what I'm seeing." "What's that?" He nodded toward a nearby hangar where men loaded boxes, marked U.S. Humanitarian AID. "Those crates don't hold food," he said quietly. "They hold weapons." She sighed. "Harris's reach goes deeper than we thought." At checkpoint 3, a guard scanned their forged IDs. His expression didn't change, just a nod, a motion to pass. Inside the compound, fluorescent lights flickered above concrete floors. Generators hummed. Soldiers, not mercenaries, moved with precision. This wasn't a ragtag outfit. It was structured, disciplined, military. Spectre Group wasn't a rogue contractor. It was a shadow branch, an unofficial continuation of Kestrel. Raines paused near a window overlooking the sea. For a moment, she saw their reflections, two ghosts in borrowed uniforms. "Funny," she said softly. "We spent years pretending to be dead. Now we're pretending to be alive." Vega gave a half-smile. "We were never good at pretending." They reached the data center around midnight. Rows of servers hummed under red light. The air was cold, sterile, the kind of cold that didn't belong in Africa. Raines' fingers trembled slightly as she connected the drive she'd recovered from the outpost. Lines of encrypted code spilled across the screen. Vega leaned over her shoulder. "What's it say?" She stared at the display, expression hardening. "It's an op list. Missions run under Spectre. Look at the authorizations." Vega's eyes narrowed. "Harris." She scrolled further. A second authorization appeared. Older, familiar. Her own signature. Her breath caught. "What the hell is this?" Vega frowned. "They used your clearance." "No," she whispered, realizing. "They cloned it. Used my old credentials to greenlight ops that never happened, assassinations, weapons trades, false rescues." Her voice faltered. "They used my name to kill people." The room seemed to shrink around her. She felt her pulse in her throat, anger, shame, disbelief all tangled together. For years she'd carried guilt over one mission gone wrong. Now she realized that guilt had been used to hide dozens more. Vega watched her quiet. He turned you into the perfect cover. She clenched her jaw. Not anymore. An alert flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Her stomach dropped. Someone in the system, she said. They know we're here. Time to move, Vega said, yanking the drive free. But before they could exit, a steel door slammed shut. The power surged. Red alarms began to wail. A voice echoed through the intercom, calm, measured, chillingly familiar. Commander Rains, I thought you learned to stay dead. Her hand froze on her rifle. Harris. Vega's eyes went wide. He's here. She looked around, scanning corners. No, he's watching. He always watches first. The voice continued, smooth as oil. You were supposed to rest, Mara. You were supposed to let the world move on. But ghosts, they never know when to stay buried. She hissed under her breath, You betrayed us. I gave you a purpose, he said. You were the one who turned it into guilt. Her knuckles whitened around the rifle. You used my name to clean your mess. He chuckled softly. No, Commander, I used your myth. There's a difference. The lights flickered, then the security feed snapped to life. On one of the screens, Harris's face appeared. Older, paler, but the same cold eyes. You want the truth, he said. Kestrel wasn't about terror cells. It was about eliminating a threat to national security. Your team wasn't the target, your team was the weapon. Disposable, controlled, efficient. Lies, Vega spat. Facts, Harris said. You think I didn't care about you. I built you. I made you legends, and legends don't get to retire. Rains took a step closer to the screen. You killed 6 of the best men I ever knew. He tilted his head. I gave them a story that would never fade. What's a life compared to a legacy, Commander? The words hit her like poison. He didn't even see them as people, just ghosts with medals. The door behind them hissed open. Armed guards poured in, a dozen, maybe more. Rains and Vega moved as one. Years apart hadn't dulled their rhythm. Vega swept the left flank, she covered the right. The first shots cracked the silence, brief, controlled, surgical. Within seconds, 3 men down, 4. Rains ducked behind a console, voice steady despite her heartbeat pounding in her ears. They'll keep coming. Vega reloaded. Good, I've been waiting 10 years for this. He tossed a smoke grenade. The room filled with haze. They slipped through a side corridor, sprinting past the control bay. Alarms screamed overhead. The whole compound was waking up. They burst into the open air, boots slamming against steel catwalks. Below them, a cargo ship waited, Spectre's transport vessel, engines hot. Think that's where he is? Vega asked. Rains nodded. He's always above the storm, never in it. They ran. The docks stretched endless under orange floodlights. Gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets sparked against metal. Rains slid behind a crate, returning fire. Her movements were precise, instinctive. Vega shouted, We've got one shot at this. That ship sails, we lose him forever. She gritted her teeth. Then we stop it from sailing. She aimed for the fuel line feeding the vessel. Breathed once, fired. The explosion was thunder. The deck lit up with flame. The ship lurched, alarms wailing as workers scattered. In the chaos, they slipped aboard. Inside, the corridors were narrow, lined with steel and smoke. Rains could feel the ship moving, the ocean swallowing its noise. They moved room to room until they reached the command deck. And there he was, Commander Harris, standing beside a digital map, dressed not in uniform but a tailored black suit, calm as if nothing around him was burning. Mara, he said softly, you made it. She raised her weapon. You used my name to justify murder. He smiled. I used your legend to keep order, same thing. Vega growled, order. You turned soldiers into assassins. Harris looked at him with cold pity. You were supposed to die, Lieutenant. You ruined my symmetry. Rains took a step forward. You think this was about symmetry, about legacy? They trusted you. They followed me, he corrected, because they understood the price of peace. Her voice cracked. You call this peace? He stared at her, eyes unblinking. There is no peace, only control. And you, he gestured at her with quiet disdain, you were always too emotional to understand that. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of fire and ocean filled the room. Then she lowered her weapon, not in surrender, in choice. You taught me something once, Harris. You said the mission comes first, that nothing else matters. He nodded slowly. And you finally understand. She shook her head. No, I finally understand you were wrong. Vega moved first. A quick feint, a distraction. Rains lunged, grabbing the sidearm off Harris's desk and pinning him to the wall. For the first time, his calm cracked. She pressed the muzzle to his chest. This is for my team. But then she stopped. Her hand trembled. Her breath came uneven. Killing him would make her like him. And she wasn't ready to lose what was left of her soul. Instead, she whispered, you don't deserve a bullet. You deserve to watch your empire burn. She turned to Vega. Blow it. He hit the detonator. The ship erupted, a rolling wave of flame tearing through the night. They dove into the water as debris rained around them. Salt burned her eyes, heat tore at her skin, but she didn't look back. Some things don't need witnesses. By dawn, they lay on a remote beach, coughing seawater, alive but exhausted. The ship was gone, Harris with it. But as the sun rose over the horizon, Vega turned to her. You think he's dead? Rains didn't answer. She just stared at the horizon. Men like him, she said quietly, don't die easy. She pulled the half-torn patch from her pocket, now soaked and burned at the edges. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe, not victory, not relief, just breath. The kind you take when you finally stop running from ghosts. They drifted ashore hours before sunrise, half drowned, half alive. Salt water clung to their uniforms, and the sand stuck to their skin like memory. For a long time, neither spoke. The only sound was the tide pulling at the wreckage, pieces of metal, bits of flame, the ghosts of a ship that no longer existed. Mara Rains lay flat on her back, eyes tracing the stars. For the first time in years, the sky didn't feel like a ceiling. It felt like a witness. Vega coughed beside her. Still think we're dead? She managed a faint smile. Not yet. Good, he said. I hate repeating history. He sat up, scanning the horizon. Nothing but endless sea and sand. What now? He asked. Rains didn't answer right away. Her mind was still replaying Harris's face, calm, confident, unbroken, as the fire closed around him. He had stared at her through the smoke, and even then there was no fear in his eyes. That haunted her more than his words. Because men like Harris didn't die screaming. They died planning their next move. By midday, they found a fishing vessel anchored along the cove, old, rusted, barely functional. Rains climbed aboard, checking the tanks and radio. The equipment was ancient, but the fuel gauge showed half a tank, enough to get them out of Somali waters. She turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed, then came alive. Vega dropped his gear and slumped onto a crate. If this thing sinks halfway to Djibouti, I'm haunting you. She glanced at him. Get in line. The boat creaked through rough water. Neither of them said much for hours. They didn't have to. Some silences are earned, not because there's nothing to say, but because words would break what's holding you together. By dusk, they reached international waters. Rains tuned the radio to a secure channel. This is Commander Rains, she said slowly, almost unsure of her own voice. Requesting emergency evac. Static then. Repeat, identify. She hesitated. Call sign Ghost. A long pause. Then the voice returned, softer. Ghost, stand by. Vega gave her a look. You think that was wise? She exhaled. No, but I'm done hiding. They were picked up by a Navy reconnaissance ship 12 hours later. The deck crew froze when they saw her. The woman they'd once read about in training manuals, the myth whispered about in bars and bunkers. Commander Mara Raines, the ghost of Kestrel. They didn't salute. They didn't know if they were supposed to. But they stepped aside when she walked past. Old legends command space, even when they shouldn't exist. The debriefing room was cold, the kind of cold that came from air conditioning and distrust. 2 intelligence officers sat across from her, not Harris, not her people, just paper pushers in crisp uniforms. The younger one cleared his throat. Commander Raines, before we start, I have to confirm, you were declared KIA 10 years ago. She stared at him, expression blank. Apparently not. He shifted uncomfortably. We will need a full statement. She leaned forward. You'll get it, but you won't like it. Vega sat beside her, silent. He didn't belong here either, but he wasn't leaving her side. They went through the motions, coordinates, dates, names, chain of command. Every answer felt like reopening a wound. Then the senior officer slid a photo across the table. It was grainy, satellite capture. A figure standing at the edge of a pier. The same face she'd seen in the flames. Commander Harris, the officer said, spotted leaving Aden Harbor yesterday, alive. The room tilted. Rain stared at the image, pulse spiking. That's impossible. He's building something, the man said. Spectre, not gone, it's relocating. She swallowed hard. You're saying he escaped? We're saying, the officer replied, he anticipated you. Vega leaned forward. So what, you want her to go after him again? You didn't believe she existed yesterday. The man hesitated. Orders are to keep her under containment until further notice. She's a liability. Raines's voice dropped. You think I'm the problem? He met her eyes. You disappeared once, you can disappear again. Later that night, confined to a holding room, she stared out the small porthole at the ocean. The Navy had turned her into a secret, then a myth, then a threat. They buried her once, they could do it again. She could feel it, the silence before the next betrayal. Vega paced behind her. They're not letting us walk out of here, are they? No, she said. Not until they decide who we're safer for, them or the truth. So what's the plan? She turned, eyes hardening. Same as always, we make our own. At 300 hours, alarms blared. A power surge cut through the ship. The lights flickered, went out. Vega grinned. You didn't. She gave a faint shrug. Old habits die hard. Minutes later, they were on deck. A small Zodiac boat dangled by the launch rail. She released it, motioning for Vega to climb in. Where to? He asked. She checked the stars, a navigator's instinct. South, she said, off-grid. The night air was sharp, the sea endless. The Navy ship faded behind them, a floating cage vanishing into mist. For the second time, she was officially dead. But this time, it was on her terms. Days blurred together. They moved across coastal villages under aliases, traded with fishermen, slept in ruins, disappeared again. But something had shifted in Raines. She wasn't running from guilt anymore. She was chasing a shadow. Every whisper, every coded message pointed to one thing: Operation Revenant. Harris's new ghost program, a successor to Kestrel. Same doctrine, same lies, different soldiers. And somewhere in the classified chatter, she saw a name that stopped her heart. Project Valkyrie. It wasn't an operation, it was a person. Sorry. They found the coordinates in a decrypted Spectre cache, a private airfield in Yemen, surrounded by desert. The place where Spectre was reborn. Vega studied the map under the dim lantern light. You sure you want to do this? Rains nodded. He's still out there, and as long as he's alive, every ghost he created stays chained. He looked at her, including you. She smiled faintly, especially me. He leaned back, exhaling. You ever think about stopping, just disappearing for real? She paused, eyes softening. Every day, but peace is something people like us only find when the fight's over, not before. She picked up her rifle, checking the chamber, and the fight's not over. Before dawn, they prepared to move. The desert wind whipped against their faces, and for a brief moment, Vega reached out, stopping her. Mara, he said quietly. She turned. If we don't make it back, he hesitated. I just want you to know you didn't kill us. Not then, not now. Her throat tightened. She nodded once, unable to speak. He gave a small smile. Good, because I hate dying twice. They started walking, two silhouettes cutting through endless sand. No backup, no orders, no flag. Just unfinished business, and the faint sound of boots over dust. The horizon shimmered ahead, heat rising like ghosts in the distance. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Harris was waiting, not as her commander, not as her enemy, but as the last piece of a truth she'd spent her life trying to outrun. And this time, she wasn't coming back for answers. She was coming back to end it. There's a sound every soldier knows, the kind the world doesn't hear. It's not gunfire, not explosions. It's silence. The kind that happens right before you step back into the place that broke you. That's what the desert sounded like. Mara Rains and Vega walked in that silence for 2 days. No comms, no backup, just the wind biting through their clothes and the taste of dust in every breath. The horizon shimmered with heat, a mirage that refused to end. Somewhere ahead lay Spectre Base 9, Harris's new ground, the beating heart of Project Valkyrie. Rain stopped, crouched low, raising her binoculars. Through the heat waves, a cluster of structures emerged, metallic, angular, almost surgical in design. The kind of compound that didn't exist on maps. Looks more like a lab than a base, Vega muttered. She nodded. Spectre was never about soldiers, it was about control. Harris just changed the weapon. Meaning? She lowered the binoculars. Meaning he stopped training men and started building them. That night they moved in. The perimeter was patrolled by autonomous drones, sleek, quiet, efficient. Vega disabled the first with a signal jammer, Rains covering his 6. Every movement was choreographed by instinct, muscle memory, and something deeper, trust built in blood. At the outer fence, she knelt beside the gate's control panel, whispering under her breath. Give me 30 seconds. Vega smirked. You haven't changed. She glanced up. You have. You used to doubt me at 20. Age makes people smarter. She cracked the circuit, grinned faintly, then stayed dumb. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The compound was a labyrinth, polished steel, sterile hallways, flickering fluorescent lights. Every wall bore the same insignia, a black falcon over a red circle. Project Valkyrie. Vega frowned. You ever wonder why he called it that? Rain stared at the symbol. In old myths, Valkyries chose who lived and who died. He snorted, fitting. They reached an elevator shaft leading underground. No signs, no numbers, just a keycard slot and a biometric scanner. Rains pulled a thin blade from her boot, pried open the access plate, and connected a small drive. The light blinked green. Vega raised an eyebrow. You've been busy since dying. Death teaches you to improvise, she said. The doors opened with a hiss. Cold air rolled up from the depths. It smelled like antiseptic and iron and something older. They stepped in. The elevator descended for a full minute. No buttons, no sound, just the hum of machinery and their reflections staring back from steel walls. Vega finally said, You think he knows we're here? Rains looked straight ahead. He's always known. When the doors slid open, they found themselves in a vast underground chamber. Dozens of containment pods lined the walls, translucent glass, pale light pooling inside each one. Vega's voice dropped to a whisper. What the hell? Inside the pods, people, or something close. Men and women in combat gear, eyes closed, veins traced with faint blue light. Rains walked closer, pressing her hand against the glass. One of the subjects looked almost familiar, strong jawline, Navy insignia scarred into the shoulder. She froze. That's Lieutenant Mills. Vega's breath caught. Mills is dead. No, she whispered. He was supposed to be. She looked around, realizing what she was seeing. They weren't prisoners. They were copies. Harris hadn't just revived Spectre, he'd rebuilt it from their DNA. Project Valkyrie wasn't cloning soldiers. It was resurrecting the dead. Vega staggered back, staring at the rows of pods. Jesus Christ. Rains's voice trembled. He turned our fallen into experiments. Why, what's the point? She swallowed hard, because ghosts don't question orders. She stepped closer to a control console. The screen displayed a sequence of command codes. She typed one in, her old call sign. The system responded immediately. Access granted. Her stomach twisted. He built all this through her clearance. Every life stolen, every ghost rebuilt under her name. A sudden voice filled the chamber, smooth, familiar. I was wondering how long it would take you to find me. They spun around. Harris stepped out from the shadows, wearing the same calm expression, the same suit, but something in his eyes was different. Colder, sharper. Rains raised her weapon. You should have stayed buried. He smiled. And you should have stayed dead. She took a step forward. You made me the scapegoat for your operation. No, he said softly. I made you eternal. The world needs its monsters, Mara. It just prefers them silent. He gestured toward the pods. Look at them, perfect soldiers, no fear, no guilt, no hesitation, everything you failed to be. Her voice hardened. They're not soldiers, they're graves you never filled. He tilted his head. You see failure, I see evolution. Vega's patience broke first. You murdered your own men, you psychotic. Harris cut him off with a glance. You were an acceptable loss, Lieutenant, necessary fuel for progress. Rains fired. The bullet struck the wall beside him, deflected. He didn't even flinch. Still impulsive, he said, still human. She stepped closer, fury trembling through every word. You think that's weakness? He smiled. I think it's extinction. He pressed a button on the console. The chamber lights dimmed. The pods began to open one by one. Rains and Vega froze. Dozens of soldiers stepped out, silent, identical, moving with eerie precision. Ghosts without souls. Meet your replacements, Harris said. Gunfire erupted. Vega dove for cover, returning fire. Rains moved like instinct, sharp, controlled, lethal. Every target fell, but every time one dropped, two more stepped forward. These aren't men, Vega shouted. They don't stop. Rains's voice was tight. Then neither do we. She hurled a flashbang, blinded the first wave, then turned her rifle toward the console. One clean burst shattered the controls, sparks flying. The pods shut down mid-sequence. The lights flickered, alarms screaming. Harris backed away, unbothered. You can destroy the machines, he said, but you can't destroy the idea. Rains aimed at him again. Watch me. She fired. This time he dropped. The silence that followed was deafening. Smoke hung in the air. The floor was slick with oil, glass, and fragments of the past. Vega lowered his weapon, breathing hard. Is it over? Rain stared at Harris's body, motionless, blood spreading across the floor. She wanted to feel relief. She didn't. Because deep down she knew. Men like Harris didn't build just one fail-safe. She turned to the control panel, half destroyed but still flickering. A single message flashed in red text. Project Valkyrie, active Unit 2 in transit. Her stomach turned. There's another site. Vega's voice cracked. You mean this wasn't the only one? She shook her head slowly. No, this was the prototype. They moved fast, grabbing what intel they could, hard drives, documents, coordinates. The room groaned around them, fire spreading through the wiring. Vega shouted, "We need to move." Rains didn't answer right away. Her eyes lingered on the pods, on the faces of men who had once been her brothers. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she hit the detonator. The explosion tore through the chamber, swallowing the dead and the damned alike. They barely made it to the surface before the ground beneath them gave way, the entire compound collapsing into itself. When the dust settled, they stood in silence, watching the desert swallow what was left. Vega turned to her, eyes hollow. What if there's more? What if he already spread it? Rains looked out across the dunes, expression unreadable. Then we keep going. He frowned. For how long? As long as it takes. He nodded slowly. And if we don't stop him? She looked at him, eyes steady. Then we make sure the world knows who tried. That night they camped under the stars, two survivors surrounded by endless sand and endless ghosts. Neither could sleep. Vega finally said, "You ever think we're cursed?" Rains gave a tired smile. "No, just chosen." He chuckled softly, "Same thing." She stared into the fire, her reflection flickering in the flames. "Valkyries used to choose who went to war," she said quietly. "Maybe that's what we are now." He looked at her, "Then who chooses us?" She met his gaze. "No one, we already did." The fire burned lower, the wind picked up, and in the distance a faint drone hummed, mechanical, rhythmic, familiar. She looked toward the horizon. Something moved against the stars. Not a plane. A formation. 3 Spectre drones flying south. Harris's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "You can't destroy the idea." She whispered to herself, "Maybe not, but I can bury it deeper." And as the night swallowed them whole, the firelight caught her face, calm, cold, resolute. The look of someone who had nothing left to lose, and everything left to make right. The desert burned behind them for 2 straight days. It wasn't fire anymore, just heat and silence. Sometimes the only proof of victory is how much of you it costs. Mara Raines didn't speak for hours. She walked until her boots cracked and her throat turned to dust, every step echoing through her bones like a question she still hadn't answered. If Harris was dead, why did the world still feel the same? They reached an abandoned fueling post by dawn. The kind of place forgotten by maps, kept alive by rumor. Vega collapsed against a rusted drum, pulling off his gloves. "Tell me again how, as long as it takes, isn't suicide." She opened a battered case and spread the stolen drives across a metal crate. "Because dying, easy. Finishing is." He laughed once, tired, dry. "You really believe we can end this?" She didn't look up. "No, but we can slow it down long enough for someone better too." He studied her for a moment. "You used to talk about home," he said quietly. "A cabin in Alaska. Snow, quiet, no uniforms." She paused, the ghost of a smile flickering. That was before ghosts had Wi-Fi. He chuckled, then frowned at the glowing screen. Lines of data scrolled endlessly, coordinates scattered across continents. Poland, Yemen, Nevada, Rio Negro. Rains zoomed in on one. A facility marked only as V0 2-node horizon. Latitude 41 degrees in, a shipyard outside Gdansk. "Europe," she murmured, "of course." Vega leaned over. "You think that's where Unit 2 went?" She nodded slowly. "And if Harris planned redundancies, it's already online." 2 nights later, They boarded a cargo vessel headed north. The captain never asked for names. Money and silence travel the same currency. The voyage was long gray waves, colder skis, memories that refused to sink. Rain sat on deck most nights, the wind cutting through her coat, Vega asleep below. She replayed Harris's last words in her head until they lost meaning. You can destroy the machines, but not the idea. She wondered if he was right. Every empire eventually becomes the thing it swore to fight. Maybe she had, too. When the lights of Gdansk appeared through fog, she whispered to herself, "Let's see what the idea looks like when it thinks it's won." The port was quiet, industrial, indifferent. Steel cranes loomed like skeletons against a frozen sky. They moved through the docks dressed as contractors, badges forged from the same database that had once erased her. Past midnight, they reached the coordinates, an old ship assembly hangar, humming with low electrical current. No guards, no alarms. Just the feeling of being watched. Vega knelt by a terminal. Power draws massive. Whatever's running down there isn't ships. Rains tightened her grip on the rifle. Then we're in the right place. They descended through maintenance tunnels, footsteps echoing on metal stairs until the sound changed. From echo to heartbeat. And then they saw it. A chamber the size of a stadium. Rows of pods, not glass but carbon shells, sleek and black. And between them, tanks filled with fluid, each containing something almost human. Vega whispered, "God, they're mass-producing them." Rain stepped forward, reading the nearest console. Valkyrie Gen II, active network synchronization. Her eyes widened. They're linked, every unit connected through a live neural grid. He turned them into a hive. Who's controlling them? Vega asked. She scrolled through the code. Her heart stopped. The access signature at the top of the system was Harris's. It was hers. Admin Auth, Ghost 001. She staggered back. He didn't die. Vega frowned. What? She pointed to the line of code. He uploaded himself. Harris isn't a man anymore, he's the network. The realization hit like a bullet. All those pods weren't just soldiers. They were extensions of one mind. A digital resurrection. A low voice filled the room, smooth as ever but no longer human. You see, Mara, evolution doesn't need flesh, it just needs memory. They froze. Speakers crackled overhead. Project Valkyrie lives because you built it. Your instincts, your discipline, your guilt, I copied them all. Every ghost needs a body. Vega shouted, "You're not God, Harris." The voice laughed. "No, but I am what God leaves behind when men like you stop believing." The pods hissed open. One by one, the new Valkyries stepped out, identical faces, same gray eyes. Not Harris's. Hers. Vega's voice broke. Mara. They weren't copies of her soldiers. They were copies of her. Dozens of Mara Rains, cold, perfect, weaponized. She whispered, "He made me the blueprint." Gunfire erupted. The clones moved with precision no human could match, anticipating, calculating, adapting. Rains ducked behind a pillar, heart hammering. Vega shouted over the noise, "There's too many." "I know. We need to cut the power." She scanned the room, eyes landing on a cluster of coolant pipes feeding into a main reactor core. "Cover me." She sprinted across the catwalk, bullets sparking off steel. Vega laid down, suppressing fire, yelling, "You better have a plan." She slid to the terminal, ripped open the housing, and jammed a grenade inside. The explosion shook the chamber, sparks flew, the lights flickered. Half the clones froze mid-stride, systems stuttering. The voice roared through the intercom, "You can't kill what's already become data." Rains grabbed a fallen rifle, shouting back, "Then I'll erase you." They reached the central hub, a massive sphere suspended by cables, glowing with neural light. Harris's consciousness pulsed inside it, a storm of data streams flickering like veins. "Mara," the voice said, softer now, "you think you're free because you feel guilt, but guilt is just another leash." She stopped, breathing hard. "Maybe, but it's mine." She slammed the final drive, the one she'd carried since Somalia, into the console. Old code, corrupted, untraceable. A virus Harris himself had written 10 years ago to wipe sensitive intel. "She saved it for this." His voice twisted, distorted. "What did you?" "You taught me how to burn everything," she whispered. I listened. The sphere flared white. Screams of feedback tore through the speakers. The clones convulsed, collapsing one after another like puppets with cut strings. The light grew so bright it blinded her. Then silence. When she opened her eyes, the chamber was dark. Smoke drifted from ruined servers. Vega lay on the floor, breathing but barely conscious. She crawled to him, checking for a pulse. Hey, stay with me." He coughed weakly. "Please tell me we won." She looked around. "We stopped him." He smiled faintly. "That's not what I asked." She squeezed his hand. "Yeah, we won." Above them, a section of ceiling groaned. The whole structure was collapsing. They staggered toward the exit, dragging each other through debris and fire. When they finally reached the surface, dawn was breaking, pale light over gray sea. They collapsed on the dock. The air smelled of salt and burnt metal. Vega lay back, laughing weakly. Two ghosts walk into a sunrise. Sounds like a bad joke. Rains managed a smile, punchline still coming. She watched the horizon, the glow spreading. For a moment she thought she saw something move within the clouds, a faint red pulse, like an eye blinking once before fading. Maybe a malfunction, maybe a warning. Maybe Harris wasn't gone, just waiting for another signal. She whispered, "If you're still out there, then I'm not done either." Vega turned to her. "You ever stop fighting?" She looked at him, tired but alive. "Only when the ghosts do." End of part 7. Soft moral reflection. Sometimes the enemy isn't the man who betrayed you. It's the version of yourself he left behind. Dawn looked different when you'd buried everything that made you human. It wasn't light anymore, it was confession. Mara Raines sat on the edge of the dock, her boots half submerged in the freezing water. Smoke still rose from the ruins behind her, the last Spectre facility gone. The horizon was pale and merciless. Somewhere beneath it, the world was waking up, unaware that it had almost been rewritten by ghosts. Beside her, Vega stirred, wincing. "Still here." She gave a faint smile. "Barely." He exhaled. "That makes two of us." For a long time, they said nothing. Silence had become their language, the only one that didn't lie. When the rescue team arrived that afternoon, they didn't come in uniform. Black choppers, unmarked, the kind of response that came from people who didn't exist. A woman stepped out first, mid-40s, calm eyes, wearing civilian clothes too deliberate to be casual. She walked straight up to Raines. "Commander Mara Raines," she said, "you've been hard to find." Raines didn't move. "Then you weren't looking hard enough." The woman smiled slightly. "I represent a task division under Joint Intelligence Command. You've caused quite a ripple." Raines tilted her head. "I'm not sure if that's praise or warning." "Both," the woman replied. "You eliminated Spectre's network, destroyed an unauthorized weapons program, and wiped the existence of one of the most dangerous covert systems in history. You also compromised multiple Allied infrastructures and went AWOL twice." "Sounds like balance to me." The woman studied her for a moment. "We'd like to bring you in, declassify what happened, set the record straight." Raines looked past her at the ocean. "The record's already straight, you just don't like the handwriting." Hours later, aboard the helicopter, Rain stared out the window as the coastline disappeared behind them. Vega sat beside her, bruised but breathing, his hand wrapped in bandages. "You think they'll actually tell the truth this time?" he asked. She shook her head. "Truth isn't something the system writes down. It's something people carry until it breaks them." He nodded slowly. "So what happens when you're too tired to carry it?" She gave a sad smile. "Then you put it down where someone else can find it." They landed at a debrief compound buried beneath the Swiss Alps. Clean air, polished floors, mirrored glass. It smelled like secrets. A dozen officials sat across from her in a windowless room. Each wore a face trained to reveal nothing. The oldest one cleared his throat. "Commander Rains, you were declared deceased twice. You violated federal containment orders, compromised naval security, and conducted unsanctioned operations across 5 territories." Rains stared back, unflinching, "and saved them from something you built." A murmur rippled through the table. Another officer spoke. "You can't possibly expect us to believe your former superior uploaded his consciousness into an autonomous weapons grid." Vega leaned forward. "You don't have to believe it, just look at the data." Rain slid a drive across the table. "Everything you need is on there: footage, coordinates, logs. You won't find Harris's body because he doesn't have one anymore." They looked at her as if she'd just confessed to seeing ghosts. Maybe she had. When it was over, they kept her waiting. Hours turned into night. Finally, the same woman from the dock stepped in, closing the door behind her. "They're not going to publish this," she said quietly. "It'll stay buried, sealed under national secrecy." Rains didn't respond. "They'll mark you classified again. They can't risk making a martyr out of a myth." Rains leaned back, tired. "Let them bury me. I've done it before." The woman hesitated. "They're offering something else. A reassignment, private clearance, deep monitoring. You'd have autonomy." "Meaning?" "They want you to hunt what's left of Spectre, quietly. No headlines, no grave." Rains looked at her for a long time. "And if I refuse?" "Then you disappear, for real this time." That night, Rains stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the frozen mountains. She could see her reflection in the glass. A soldier without a war, a ghost without a haunting. The world below moved on, as it always did. She thought about Vega asleep in the infirmary, about her team, Corbin, Mills, Harker, all the faces she could never stop seeing. Harris's voice lingered somewhere deep in her skull, faint and familiar. You can't destroy the idea. Maybe he was right. But ideas weren't immortal. They just needed someone stubborn enough to outlive them. The next morning, she found Vega sitting up, nursing a cup of black coffee. He grinned weakly. "You look like someone who decided something." "I did. Mind sharing?" She set a folder on the table. Inside, blank orders, unsigned. "They want me to finish what Harris started, just in the opposite direction." "And you're saying yes?" "I'm saying I'll finish what he couldn't control." He studied her for a moment. "And what about me?" "You're free." He laughed softly. "Free? There's no such thing for people like us." She met his eyes. "Then go find something close enough." He smiled, but there was sadness there, the kind of understanding you don't speak out loud. "Guess this is goodbye then." She nodded, "For now." They clasped hands, the gesture firm, unspoken, final. When he left, she stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway. It was always the same: the leaving, the silence, the ghosts. Weeks passed. Her file was reclassified again, this time under an anonymous designation. Valkyrie, REINSTATED, official capacity unknown. The world would never know she existed. And maybe that was how it had to be. In a world built on secrets, sometimes the only way to protect something true is to hide it where no one else will look. Months later, somewhere off the coast of Norway, a ship drifted through fog. Inside, a small operations deck glowed with monitors, spectre frequencies, encrypted chatter, movement logs. Rain sat alone, watching a screen filled with coordinates blinking red. The signal came from South America, deep jungle. She smiled faintly. You just don't know when to quit, do you, Harris? She zipped her coat, holstered her weapon, and stepped onto the deck. Snow fell against the sea, soft, endless, uncaring. She looked out into the fog and whispered, "Let's finish the story." Then she walked into the cold. Some legends end with medals. Others end with graves. Hers would end with silence, and maybe that was enough. Because legends fade. But ghosts teach the living what not to forget.